Hey, sorry about that. I just I ran out of disk space, so I had to stop. That's why there's a delay in time. There's a gap there. I had to delete some stuff. So, anyways, I was talking about neoliberalism and how Anglicans and, for example, Baird used neoliberalism to their own advantage to gain profit and to gain advantage for themselves. And there's many aspects of neolib. There's many aspects of what happened here with the camera that can be seen as a neoliberal ideas. For example, the whole idea of anonymity, hiding the camera. That's a neoliberal. That's something that neoliberalism uses to their advantage, and Anglicans use that to their advantage as well. Hiding anonymity, living in anonymity. For example, you won't hear anything about the neighbor, and that's fine. But that's to their advantage because he can continue his computer activities, his computer crimes, and go under the radar. And that's the whole point. Anonymity under the radar, and that's the scary thing about this computer attack that I found in Senra, which is anonymity under the radar. You don't see it. So anonymity is very important to the Anglicans. It's very important to be able to survey in secret and not have people knowing that you're doing it. You don't want people on guard. You want people because you want to be able to manipulate them. If people are knowing you're watching them, you're not, it's going to be more difficult to manipulate them. But if people don't know that you're watching them, it's much easier to manipulate them, to get them to do angry things, to get them to look bad in public, to get them to be violent or aggressive or rude or, act in ways that you can use against them. That's why you want to act. That's why the Anglicans want to act in anonymity. Do you ever hear anything about Anglican corruption? Not very much. Do you hear about Catholics? Yeah. Do you hear about you even hear about Jewish corruption? But do you ever hear about Anglicans? No. You barely ever hear about them. Oh, now that I've said it, another thing is to use the courts. You use the law system to your own advantage. So you act as far as you can without breaking the law. And if you do break the law and you get caught, then you say, oh, sorry, we didn't know. Or you create a myth to justify your behavior, or you create a myth to cover up your behavior. And also controlling information. By having a camera secret like that, you're controlling information in a way because you're watching and the person doesn't know you're watching, so you're gathering information without that person knowing, so you're kind of controlling information in a way. It's very much like what Foolfleet does with the computers. He's been in our computers since we moved here. He's been monitoring our network activity since we moved here, so he knows what I'm talking about, so then he can mount a defense. If he knows I'm complaining or arguing about, like for example, I started talking about the surveillance in the videos, that I started talking about the possibility that I thought they might have had audio surveillance or video surveillance. What happens? Well, he gets that information, then he can cover his butt by taking the camera out of hiding and putting it on the wall. Now, if he had been counted, if he had been caught with, if the Anglicans had been caught with that camera hiding in a window, people might say, well, why are you trying to hide that camera? See, so that's controlling information. By controlling information and getting into people's computers, by listening to people's activities, by listening to people's phone calls, you get information quickly. You can act on that information. If there's anything in there that might be against you or might be valid information against your own criminal activity, you can defend yourself quickly, and you can create a backstory, and you can justify yourself. And using the legal system and your knowledge of the legal system, you can get away with it, and you know how to cover your ass, you know how to protect your assets, and controlling communication, and using all these different techniques are very much neoliberal techniques to control ideas and to control market and to control population. For example, I mean, if you I'll be talking forever if I keep talking about the examples of neoliberalism in history and how they control markets to get their own ends. But there's basically a few ideas. You control political officials and control political ideas using the media or using political officials themselves that are in your pocket. You use the courts and your knowledge of the legal system. You control information, and you control communications. all these things that Anglican students here are practicing and doing, and all these things the Anglican Church does, and that camera in the window, hiding behind that window there, is a perfect example. And the fact that the camera was taken out and put on the wall is another perfect example. And the fact that they were instigating us before they could put the camera on the wall to try and get a reason to put the camera on the wall, to justify their putting a camera on the wall. Well, we have to put the camera on the wall because he's bad, because he's unstable. And I've said this many, many times in the previous videos, that I thought that they were trying to act in a way to establish, they created a myth, and then they look for evidence to support that myth. So they created this myth that I'm aggressive and a harsh or unstable, dangerous person, and then they create evidence to support that myth. It's very backwards, but they do that all the time. King Henry did it. He created a myth based off of that's how he got out of his a marriage that he didn't want. He created a myth saying that the king was that England was an empire, that the king was like an emperor, and therefore the king of England could be separate from the papal, the Roman Catholic Church. And where did he get that idea from? A myth. It was a myth taken from history, 12th century history of British kings, and I think it was Geoffrey something wrote it. Anyways, it was a myth about King Arthur and how King Arthur had the right to, he was an emperor, and King Henry VIII took that idea that the King of England was an emperor and ran with it, and used it to justify separating from the Roman Catholic Church. So see, even the beginning of the Anglican Church was based on myth, and this is just another example, and they continue to go on and on and on, and they create myth, and they live on neoliberal ideologies, and they survey, and they watch, and they, try to entrap people, and basically there's, they encourage a lot of really dishonorable behavior patterns. Now, this camera has been here for 9 months, and finally they put it on the outside wall. So at least everybody knows that there's a camera up there. Now, if it is not a camera, I can't see because I'm not allowed to go on the property, and it's 200 meters away, and I don't have the equipment to see it properly. If it's not a camera, then they went through a hell of a lot of trouble to make it look like a camera. In which case, you still got to ask yourself, why are they doing that? Well, to get me to talk, to get me to look like an idiot, possibly. But why in the world would you go through all that trouble to mount an object that looks like a camera if it isn't a camera? So just beware. Keep your eyes open. These Anglicans are not good people.